Hello and welcome to Midweek Meditations, where we have an opportunity to briefly share with you what God has shared with us. We're on this journey entitled Addicted. We've been looking at 2 Corinthians, the 10th chapter, verses 1 through 4. But we added another component to that, verse 5, where Paul talks about being able to withstand everything that the enemy throws at us, being able to withstand the high things that come at us. And that's what we talked about on this last weekend. We talked about those high things, and we talked about the fact that being able to pull down those high things means moving us into an arena of recovery. Oh, yes, I want to remind you that we are not supposed to stay in the positions that we're in. We are supposed to be moving it into an arena of recovery. And that's what Paul talks about. Paul says you can pull down those high things, bring down those high things, those things that stand up against between you and God. And so I just want to remind you, we're looking at recovery, and we decided we would just take the steps of celebrate recovery. And steps 1 and 2, first 2 steps of celebrate recovery is, number 1, you've got to admit that you are not God. You are not God. God is God, and God can bring you out. God can strengthen you. God can help you. God can give you power. Then number 2, it says you must realize that God exists, that He exists, and He's there for you. You are not too bad that He can't reach you. There's nothing that can keep Him from loving you, and so you've got to trust that God truly loves you, and He loves you the way you are, and He wants to take you where He wants you to be. All those are 2 powerful things that I want to remind you of. And then as I close, I want to remind you of this brother. His name was Rick Brandstrick. Rick Brandstrick had an issue going on. He was sick. He found himself at the hospital. He went to the hospital, and the hospital ran him over a bunch of tests. He went through those tests, and finally they said, listen, Rick, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. You have pancreatic cancer. You're not going to make it. And so Rick left there, and he said to himself, you know what? I need to go ahead and start living now because I'm about to die. And so he cashed in all of his funds. He sold his house. He sold his car. He sold his clothes. He did everything. And he went on this long expedition. He said, I'm going to hang out for just a year and spend some time and getting to know myself and just enjoying life. And that's what he did. A year later, he comes back to the doctor and he says, listen, you all told me that my time was short, but I feel better than I felt a year ago. And so the doctors ran some more tests on him, and they found out he does not have pancreatic cancer. He had a cyst that was going on in there. He had inflammation of the pancreas instead of pancreatic cancer. And so what did he do? You know what Rick did? Rick decided he would sue the hospital. But I want to pause and tell you something as I'm closing right now, that wouldn't it have been better for Rick to say, let me just keep on living rather than suing the hospital? And I want to pause and tell you that Rick teaches us something. Rick teaches us that oftentimes it's when we die or when we're facing death that we can begin living. And there's some things that have to die in our lives, some addictions that have to die in our lives so that you and I can go on living. And I want to challenge you. That's what this series is all about. This series is not about being addicted. This series is really about recovering from those addictions so that we can live and live for God. And that's what I want to challenge you with as I close right now. I pray that you will find some strength to live for God and join us as we meet again at the appointed time for midweek meditations. God bless you till we see you again.